So welcome, everybody. Welcome back. Tonight, we have an experience panel. We do these about once a month, where we bring in groups of folks that have something in common, and they get to talk about their experiences as firearms owners and, just in general, their experiences as human beings. Paul Kronk is going to be sort of helping us moderate this tonight. In addition to being tonight's sort of MC for things, he's also been the one that makes all of our videos look a little less terrible. He's got some pretty terrible source material to work with. So if you like the videos, you're going to want to give him a thumbs up at some point, and maybe even a raise. But he came to me and Danny and the rest of the team and said he wanted to do something about sobriety and addiction. And that seemed a perfect topic for one of these experience panels. We are live on YouTube, on Twitch, on Twitter, on Facebook, on both our public page as well as our private members only lounge. And obviously we are live here on Zoom. All right, well, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Paul, who's going to make introductions to our esteemed panel, at least one of which has been on a panel before, but I'll let him make note of that. And Paul, go ahead, take it away.
Cool. Yeah, so this is, I'm Paul Kronk, by the way. I'm a LGC member from Florida. I've been a member of the club for a couple of years now. I've been sober for 1 year and 2 months. My last drink was Christmas Day 2019, and I never looked back from there. I don't know, let's go around the room and do some introductions, and then we'll kind of get into it. So, Will, you're to my right, so you go first.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah.
Right on. Howdy, y'all. Will Hancock, also known as Sapper Gentleman. And I had my last drink 13 years ago, February 8th.
Wow. Congrats.
It's been a minute. So, yeah, standard, sob story, whatever. All the I was a party kid, and I'll wait until folks ask questions, I guess, before laying it all on you, but it's good to be here.
I guess I can go.
Cool. Actually, yeah, go for it.
My name's Eddie Davenport. I am actually a social worker out of North Carolina. I don't have the disease of addiction in my family or myself, but I'm going through my graduate program right now, and as I get my master's in social work, and one of my focuses is on trauma and substance abuse. So, figured they asked me if I could wanted to be in here tonight, and I figured, you know what, I like guns, I like mental health, and this is a good time to get it out there.
Cool, Mawenzi, how about you?
Hi there, I'm Mawenzi. I'm about 1 year Liberal Gun Club member, maybe a little bit less actually. And I've been sober for just over 3.5 years. I'm actually on the board of directors of a 501c3 that does peer-to-peer support. So we are the easiest way to understand it. We are like AA, but we are not AA because we are secular. AA is not secular. Some people that may or may not know that, but so I'm fairly active. I convene a meeting, which used to be in person, now is on Zoom weekly. So I get about 20, 30 people every Thursday night. About half of them are people that come every week, and I get to meet a lot of people who are going through recovery. So that's me. I'm glad Paul asked me to be on this panel. I'm definitely passionate about both gun ownership and about recovery. So Happy to be here.
Cool. So this is I guess we'll just kind of go into this. This is a really big topic. And as far as addiction and recovery and sobriety, there's libraries that have been written about this. I'm really proud to be part of LGC, because LGC as an organization has been kind of out front in this whole discussion about mental health and how that relates to firearms. And yet at the same time, it's I say, if mental health was the elephant in the room in the firearms community, I like to say that substance abuse is like the 5,000-pound pissed off gorilla that nobody wants to seem to talk about. It's there, and it affects a lot of people, and yet we don't. Nobody really seems to want to talk about it. I mean, just to go, I'm not going to harp on this too much, but just to kind of get some conversation going, 48% of all homicide perpetrators have alcohol in their system at the time. 37% are intoxicated. That's significant. There's huge connections between, where mental health has connections between suicide and also, being a victim of violent crime. The same is true for substance abuse, but you can throw into that mix being a perpetrator of violent crime as well. When you're going through addiction. It's huge. 55% of domestic violence perpetrators are under the influence of alcohol at the time of assault. So I feel like it's this really big topic that I know that we need to start to tackle within this community. I don't know. Does anybody have any thoughts yet? I mean, Eddie, I feel like you see a lot of this in your line of work.
Yeah, my background is actually in fire EMS, so I was responding to this stuff long before I decided to go down the clinical route. And yeah, I mean, what do people generally turn to when they're sad, or something? Hey, you're sad. What's drink? Something like that. And some people can handle it. Some people are addicted. It really depends what it is, But there is a major correlation between, bad decisions and alcohol, bad decisions and substances. There is a huge correlation between alcohol and suicide. Alcohol is a depressant. You're already depressed. You're already going down that route. You start getting drunk. You start getting more and more down those cells. And then you make, the thing I like to tell people, especially, and it's the statistics are out there, firearms aren't the most commonly used item in suicides, but they are the most lethal. And so if you use a firearm once you're down that route, there's no turning back. So the correlations are there. And I don't think we in the gun culture talk about it, like I said, in general, when you told me the 5,000-pound pissed off gorilla thing, that made me chuckle, because it's true. No one talks about it. We don't address it. And we kind of we sweep it under the rug. Mental health, we're kind of they talk about in the sense that, it's mental health is an issue. It's a problem. But what about other issues inside it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, I guess that's kind of, what I was starting to get at with this, it's and I'm not exactly sure why, because we know it's there. We know it's there because of the suicide rate among veterans, of the substance abuse rate among veterans, and the crossover there with with firearms ownership. And it's why is it that we don't want to talk about it yet? Is there a stigma? Is it that whole, we almost say responsible gun owner, automatically, it's what does that mean? You passed a 4473, NICS background check and maybe even lied on the form about it. I mean, question E's got to be the most lied to question on any federal form outside of tax documents, maybe, so what exactly does being a responsible gun owner mean, and what kind of stigmas does that create? And then also the legal implications if somebody says hey, I have a problem, is that person afraid to come forward because they're afraid of losing their firearms?
Valid.
Well, I would say that mental illness is real. I mean, I think you talked about it being a guerrilla in the context of gun ownership, but I think that mental illness is really pervasive in let's say America. I mean, I have lived outside of America, but I would say in America it's both pervasive and there's a huge stigma behind it. At the group that we have we have some email groups, and one of them is for people with dual diagnosis. And I haven't done, there's probably some research by the NIH or SAMHSA, these groups that study addiction, that talk about dual diagnosis being you have substance abuse and you have some kind of mental illness. I would bet that it's very, very high, because we have, this dual diagnosis group is very large. I went into what's called an intensive outpatient program. They had one which was single diagnosis for addiction, and then they had like 3 for dual diagnosis. Like it was, as far that tells you sort of the population, right? It's a much bigger thing. So I mean, I think it's it's something that sort of under the radar that Americans don't really want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry.
No, you can go ahead, Eddie.
No, like I was gonna tackle on that. Like Will can speak more to this because he's in the veterans community, but I saw it a lot with the first responder community, like self-medicating. I'm very open in other things that I have PTSD. Now, some people dealt with it negatively. There's really no good way of dealing with it except tackling it on, stuff like that. But what really came about was it the substance abuse issue first or the mental health issue? Was the substance abuse issue like self-medication, or did the mental health issue come about from that because of the choices the med during those times? So it's the dual diagnosis. It's a lot of programs they're slow to adapt that, hey, people have both of them and it is okay. Or they maybe like, I wouldn't say that every addict or every person who's in recovery or something like that has a dual diagnosis. But when when seeking the drugs or whatever you were seeking, you were doing different activities. So those generally came about something, even if it's something as like generalized anxiety disorder or anything like that. Like, what were you doing these substances for? What were you trying to medicate in the past that you didn't want to deal with?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. And so this elephant and this gorilla, they're kind of like a pair of schoolyard bullies in a way. And they're working together and they're egging each other on and they're pushing each other to do, make increasingly poor decisions. And it turns into a spiral, right? Like being depressed leads you to drink, and drinking leads you to more depression. And
is the veteran in the room, and I always throw out there, I'm not a combat veteran, so I'm speaking from a peacetime veteran perspective. I knew I was alcoholic in high school, but I got my doctorate in alcoholism in the service. It's cultural. It's huge. Every military event you attend, there is booze. Meaning social event, barbecues, picnic, baseball game, booze everywhere. You go to the PX, booze is cheap, relative to the civilian economy. It's dirt cheap. It's crazy cheap. You can afford to stay drunk all month long on a E1, E2 paycheck, and it literally feels like it's promoted. And it may be a little different now. I'm back in the mid 90s era, but it was insane. It was crazy how much it's things are great, drink. Oh, things are bad, drink. And and that carries over into the gun culture at large. It's the acceptable thing to do. You can't take pictures of your bong and a thing of weed and next to your gun and post it on Instagram. But all day long, all over my Facebook and Instagram gun pages, bottle of whiskey and a 9mm, bam, and it's like, yeah, like what is that? How like?
Oh yeah, yeah, and it's funny. I've started to notice that a lot more. Go to Recoil magazine. They do whiskey reviews. Right next to like the review of the whatever the newest CZ or Glock is.
The cigar and the cognac and the pistol, and it's like it's man stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
But if you did that with like a fat line of cocaine and a razor blade, and like. That ain't gonna fly, right? So yeah, booze is the acceptable one for whatever reason. And
when statistically, it's probably the most dangerous of all of them. Yeah,
without a doubt. For me personally, like all of the times I ended up doing overnighters, it was because of booze. I never smoked weed and like ended up in jail. Like that never happened. So yeah, definitely.
Well, and that's actually a funny point that you bring up that I kind of want to touch on as well is, like you're saying, like, do people have a problem coming forward to somebody and seeking help? Because it's like, all right, if I go to an addiction treatment center, does my name end up in some database somewhere, And
I think the biggest reason people don't seek help is because they don't want to quit drinking.
I think that's very true.
They just, it's like, yeah, I might have a little bit of a problem, but I'll get it under control later. Just don't want to stop. And society says that it's okay to keep doing.
No, and that's very true. I mean, and we see it from a very young age. From people around us that we love and respect and look up to. And then we turn the television on and there's advertisements saying, if you drink, you're going to have, way more sex and you're going to be, super manly and like drive this awesome car and like get to take a private jet to Europe with a bunch of supermodels or whatever, that's, and, but
it's so much harder to quit drinking because you don't walk into 7-Eleven and see like a pack of, like weed lights, like on the shelf, there isn't like a whole row of like Coke and pills, and it's wow. the liquor is everywhere around you. So putting down cocaine, like once you just put your mind to it, really isn't that hard. Putting down the hard stuff, I mean, heroin's maybe a different, like the opiates and stuff. I never went down that path, so I won't speak to that. I get that's a whole other like animal. But I had a pretty significant cocaine problem for a bunch of years, and I put that shit down cold turkey, and it wasn't really that hard because all you have to do is stop going to where the cocaine is, and it gets like instantly easier. But booze is everywhere, every birthday party, every Christmas party, work functions, it's all over the place, and it's in the grocery store. Every time you go to buy food, it's right there, and it talks to you. It's like, hey, Will, come on, just one more ride. Come on,
Yeah, and not only birthday parties, but like your friends' kids' birthday parties and baby showers, and it's funerals. You ever been to a funeral without booze?
Chuck E. Cheese has beer on tap, so think of it that way.
I'm sorry, guys. I want to interject real quick. Do you think part of this, acceptability for alcohol and alcoholism, is part of the fact that it is still legal when science tells us, that things like marijuana, are maybe less detrimental to our overall health in the long run. But we know that alcohol can cause, not just organ damage, but these other things. Like, do you have a remedy or an idea of what could help?
So I'm actually really happy this came up because like, I do want to say like, I'm not like me personally, I'm not a prohibitionist at all. Not when it comes to drugs and not when it comes to guns. We tried alcohol prohibition once and it was an unmitigated disaster. We've been trying drug prohibition for the better part of 100 years now in various forms, and it's all been an unmitigated disaster, and it's it's one of those things where, and like cannabis, like that's a great example. Like to me, like it's ridiculous to a certain extent that like somebody can be like a falling down alcoholic, and as long as they're sober enough to not get kicked out of a gun store, they can go buy a gun. But if somebody has a medical cannabis card because they use it for insomnia or, you know, pain management or something like that, like they're off limits, you know? Meanwhile, you ask any cop in the country, whether they'd rather walk into a room full of drunk people or a room full of people high on cannabis, they'll tell you cannabis every single time.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't know, and it may be measurable now that it's been legal in enough states. There may have been some kind of impact on alcohol use in states where weed is legal. I don't know, but I don't know that legalizing it nationwide would help that much with people's alcohol problems, because people like to be drunk. It's two different things. Like, I mean, I get it. I mean, I get the question. Like, I think it definitely helped me in times when I was at my like worst drinking to be like, you know what, I need to just smoke more weed and like get off the bottle for a minute. But inevitably that birthday party, that work function, that Tuesday afternoon when I'm alone, and like some kind of event would happen where I needed to get absolutely shit-faced drunk, and it's because I liked being very drunk.
Well, there
scratch that itch.
Actually has been studies. It's not a lot though. It's like less than 10%. So it's the same thing. Like if people who have the addiction, if you want to get drunk, they're gonna get drunk.
Yeah, that would be fun. Yeah.
I should probably own this, guys. I think in the beginning, I'm not an addict. I actually homebrew. So I'm just owning it. I'm the weird one on this panel, okay? But like I do see the ideas like the prohibition doesn't work. I mean, like where the states that like weed has been legalized, they're doing a good, like Washington State. They're using the sales from the legal cannabis to fund their drug rehab programs. Yep. So like there's like we tried cannabis in the 20s and stuff like that. We tried prohibition in the 20s, and we saw all the gang violence from that. Now we're seeing all the gang violence rising from all the other drugs. I'm not saying legalize every drug on the book. No. That'd be a bad idea. But I'm saying like we got to do something better than this.
Let me, if I can, let me bring this to a topic that I've been discussing with Paul and some others up to this point, which is, you know, I'm very careful when I first meet people. And like I said, I convene this meeting every Thursday. There's a lot of, you know, people who I've never met before. So I actually do not talk about firearms at all, even though for me, it actually was a part of my recovery, because it was something that so number one, I had a gun way back when I was a teenager, 20 or whatever, didn't shoot for a very long time, and then just recently got back into it last year. And so, and I had said I'm 3.5 years, so I was 2.5 years into my sobriety, and I thought, well, now I can do it, because before, when I was using, there's no way I would have wanted to purchase a firearm. Who knows what may have happened? But I'm very confident now that I can do that. And so, to be honest with you, sometimes in this Thursday meeting, I'll say like barbecue or woodworking, which are some other hobbies that I have. I'll use that when I really meant like going to the range or whatever. But I'm sensitive. Now, when you get to know somebody and you learn about somebody's path to recovery, in which, of the hundreds of people that I've met, there's some common things. But for the most part, everyone's path to recovery is different. Some people go to AA, some people don't. Some people go to a detox, some people don't. It's all over the map. But my mentor in the group that I volunteer with right now, he's a musician, and he loves music. He loves watching small bands, perform. Well, where do those small bands perform? at bars, right? So for me, to be honest with you, a bar is more dangerous than a firearm, but that's me. For him, he's totally fine going into a bar and not drinking. He has his club soda and he goes and he drinks. And I think that, for firearms, and how it's relevant here is that, you do need to be careful. And I think it's because of the, as Eddie was saying, is, the suicide aspect to it. I mean, many, there's a significant number of people who commit suicide using a firearm. So it's something that we definitely have to be, we have to be careful of. But it's also not something that you absolutely, that you can't flat out say, no way, don't ever do that. I think, it's a lot more complex, right? Which is, Paul, in the intro, you were talking about sort of the complexity of really gun ownership, right? And we have, the root cause, right? That's the Liberal Gun Club's mission, right? Is to promote root cause identification and remediation. And unfortunately, the root cause, it's really complicated, right? It's more complicated than our, government that can barely even, pass a budget, right? It's so complicated that they're not going to be able to. I mean, my opinion is they're not going to be able to fix it. You may call me a pessimist. I hope I'm wrong. But that's my feeling about it.
Will, you had something to interject here?
So I have a grandfather I never met because he committed suicide with a firearm.
Yeah.
Before I was born. And he was a known alcoholic. So through all of my years of drinking and using, I had 2 policies: no motorcycles and no guns. And that served me very well because I was I was a little bit nuts. So, and I don't mean poor choice of terminology. I'm sorry.
You were the responsible drunk?
No, you were a wild child.
I was
a wild child.
Yeah. I was always the kind of alcoholic. I did not have to drink every day. I tended to, but I did not have to. Never drank in the morning, never drank at work. My deal was, once that bottle comes off, it's like Russian roulette. I might be able to drink like a lady for a few hours and go home or I might end up in bed with a strange, like your wife or something. Like there was never any way of knowing, and it very often went very, very, very bad. So
yeah, totally.
So having guns in the house served me well. I got my first personal firearm outside of the military. My dad gifted me a gun at my 1-year sobriety anniversary. And it was heavy because I have a grandfather who committed suicide with one. And so they've always it's always been a thing. Like, I love guns. I love shooting them. I would go to the range with other people, but I couldn't trust myself to have one in the house. Just didn't want to do it. And at the 1-year mark, it was like, I think I can handle this, I think. But it was still kind of heavy. And then I found a lot of power in having enough self-control.
Yeah.
Then it became a deal like, dude, now I totally can't fuck up and start drinking because I got a gun in the house. And I feel like it really helped me stay sober. Plus, it just gave me a thing to be thinking about all of the time and to keep my little mind occupied.
Yeah.
And instead of going into evil places, I was thinking about, okay, I need another gun now.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
And it just doing, being online, reading through forums and studying ballistics and watching YouTube videos and all of this stuff just gives you a thing to be doing other than getting shit-faced. And so they say you replace an addiction with another addiction. the initial one in my first year of sobriety, actually, I became a personal trainer as I was getting sober. Like as I was doing my 12 steps in early sobriety, I was also studying to get my personal trainer certification. And I lived in the gym. I gained like 20 pounds. I was all like, and I just put all of that energy. I would work out twice a day sometimes. Like just, I put it all into the gym. And then I got a gun and I was like, oh, good. I don't have to work out so much anymore. And I immediately lost that 20 pounds. But yeah, and I think, it's not a path I would recommend for everybody in a first year of sobriety, but it worked for me.
Yeah. I mean, well, and I mean, so yeah, maybe we can start talking about some of the, I mean, obviously we talk about the danger of alcohol. Let's talk about some of the awesome stuff about being sober, especially like as a gun owner, So like, first of all, like no more morning shakes, like I can go to the range and I can shoot true first thing. I don't have to sweat it out. I'm not, the night before or whatever, I can carry 16, 18 hours a day, however long I'm awake for. And I don't have to worry about not being lucid enough to make the proper decisions with that firearm. I don't have to worry about the legal risk of, all right, let's say I do have to defend myself. And if you are a drinker and you're in a situation where you have to defend yourself, even if that was a legally justifiable, situation, you better believe that depending on who it is that you had to defend yourself against, that there's going to be civil recourses from that. They're going to take you to court.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that person's family's lawyer is going to say he was under the influence at the time, especially if you're in like a duty to retreat state, how much did he really try to get away there? Or was he not thinking clearly because he was, under the influence, And you're even just less likely to be in a situation in the first place where you would have to defend yourself. And like me personally, like Mawenzi, you're talking about how like a bar is more dangerous for you than a gun. I have no problem being around alcohol. Like my girl still drinks. In fact, if anything, it's one of the things that helped me because it kind of it took away that the cookie jar thing of it.
I made myself go to bars and nightclubs. I was still living in California at the time, and all my friends were musicians, and I would go see them play. I had to curtail, like there was a time where it was like, okay, the set's over, I'm out.
Yeah.
In the barbershop long enough, you will get a haircut. Is the only expression.
Yeah.
So I mean, I would get there early, be social, and then jam. Like as soon as the minute those drumsticks went down, I was out.
Yeah.
But I made myself go confront it because, you don't want it to be a deal where it's like, oh my God, somebody's drinking around me. Shit, I'm going to fall off the wagon. And like, no, dude, you're going to have to be able to live in a world where people drink. Like,
I got a funny story about that. So I actually, I help host an AA group for my work. And so, God, I can't believe I'm admitting this on the air, but whatever. My keychain has a Sam Adams bottle opener on. I've had it since I was 21. I went in a bar, and I don't even use the thing. What I really use it for, I have a hook. I use it to put my keys on a hook. And my keys happen to be out on the table at the group. And a new member came out, saw that, and started freaking out. It was kind of like, all right, now let's talk about this for a second. Beer ads are everywhere. If this keychain is that much of a trigger for you, you need to be in this group.
Yeah, no, that's weak. You can't.
Yeah, it's like so. But how can you have this? You're an addict. So I said, I'm not an addict.
You cannot expect the world to shift around you. That's maniacal ego.
And you have to learn coping mechanisms to be able to deal with it. You cannot avoid it. You can't put yourself in a box in a room and lock yourself there and never go out. When you go to the grocery store, when you go to a bar, when you go wherever, you have to be able to, you're like, okay, and for me, it changed over time. Like in the beginning, wine was my big drink. And when in my first 6 to 12 months of sobriety, when I would go to the grocery store, I would literally avoid the wine. I would be like, if bread was there, we needed bread, like I wouldn't buy bread. Like that's how, I avoid it. But then over time, I was like, you know what? Like I'm now in control of me. this is not, I'm going to go and I would actually look at after about a year, I would look at the aisle, I would look at the wine and be like, I just think to myself, F you, I'm like, you don't own me anymore. I can walk right by you and I'm never, ever going to pick this up or buy this ever again.
That's the basis of exposure therapy. You overcame it, and then you just like, all right, you don't control me anymore. No matter what path you chose, you made the decision.
Yeah.
One of my favorite whoa moments in early sobriety. So I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and my sponsor had a rad pool at his apartment complex. So I'm driving to go do step work with my sponsor, and I swing into a 7-Eleven to get a pack of smokes. And there was Corona and it was all iced down in the big thing, like right at the register. And it was like, dude, I should totally pick up some Coronas, and because we can kick by like at the pool. And it was like, oh my, dude, I'm going to my sponsor's house. Like the full thought went all the way through my head. Man, it would be awesome, like to be chilling at the pool, doing some step work with some Coronas. The brain, like that, the habit, the patterns, habits that your brain goes through, it takes a while to unwire that stuff. And like, learn how to have sex.
And that's really what
nobody talks about is learning how to hook up when you're not drunk. Like if you're used to that.
but so that's the whole thing, right? Is that at a certain point, like to me, like I tell people that I drink as much as I want to whenever I want to, and that amount just happens to be 0, like because you can abstain and use willpower for long enough to get the booze out of your system, right? And let your body flush itself. And then at a certain point, like you have to start to a large extent, like reprogramming your unconscious mind to see alcohol for what it is. As long as you have that idea in your head that alcohol is something that brings you like great pleasure. And like I said, you believe the advertisements that like you're going to have a ton of sex with supermodels on private planes, like as long as that idea kind of persists, then it still has power over you, and just using willpower, like willpower fails over a long enough period of time, as anybody who's relapsed several times, and I've seen a lot of it in my life, can tell you. At a certain point, like you need the knowledge and the tools to understand where like your belief systems come from, and be able to recognize like when you see an advertisement or you see somebody drinking around you, even somebody you look up to, and realize, all right, what parts of my brain is that activating? What is that trying to tell me? And be able to recognize it and inoculate yourself to it. And then once you make alcohol small, like it becomes a lot easier. I said, I can go to bars. And one of the things that I found actually is once I got sober, there was a certain fear before I did it. And it's probably why I put it off for the longest time. Like I'm a music guy, and it's like, right, am I going to enjoy concerts as much? Am I going to enjoy like all this stuff that I do? Like, is it going to be like lame? Am I not going to be able to enjoy this stuff? What I eventually realized is that like, we attach all these things to alcohol because alcohol is always there. That's not what actually brings the joy of this situation. It's this great band you're seeing, or it's the people that you're with. It's spending time with people you honestly enjoy being around, And then sometimes you realize, all right, there were things that I did that I honestly didn't enjoy, but I did them anyways because it was an excuse to drink, and you stop doing those things, but the things that actually bring you joy in life, you continue to do those things just without drinking, and it's better, and you remember it, and you drive home safely and wake up the next day.
A lot of things become they actually are less fun when you're not drinking. And it's because they really weren't. It was the drinking that made them so awesome, and like
for some, right? For
you can go enjoy music,
things that you didn't like to do, right?
Music. It's not subjective. Like it is what it is. But the concert and the like dancing and sometimes and try being the sober guy. Like announce your sobriety in a room full of drunk people and see how they
Oh my God. Yeah.
And that's what I'm talking about is that, like, drunk people don't like sober people. And in fact, just even online, you can like talk about, well, I'm sober, I don't drink, blah, blah, blah. And it is wild. People's defensive response where they chime back with, well, I really don't drink that much, you know, and it's like,
yeah,
you didn't drink that much, you wouldn't have any need to respond, would you?
totally. If somebody, you know, if I said, oh, like, I don't eat eggs. Well, you know, I only eat like half a dozen a week, you know, I'm not that into eggs, you know, like I eat them, but it's not my thing, you know?
Yes, that
like,
right there. That is exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Part of that is because, you know, you're kind of holding a mirror up to somebody in a little bit of a way, you know, and it's confronting
Makes
something
them very
in them,
uncomfortable. Yeah.
yeah, that they know is there and they don't want to handle themselves yet, you know. Yeah, so that's definitely a thing, you know.
Eggs, dude. That's awesome. Yes.
One thing that Mawenzi said, am I saying your name correctly, Mawenzi?
Yeah.
Okay, but one thing that Mawenzi said that I think was really powerful in that moment, though, he's talking about he says, I use woodworking. I don't emit firearms, I shoot firearms. For me, coming from like a clinical background in that sense, the thinking of it is for us, like for people that experience traumas or anything like stuff like that, we find what was out of balance in your life, put it back in balance. For my personal story, out of balance for me was I'm a competitive shooter. And by the way, the story about people shaking in the morning, I got a funny story about that one. Not me, but it cost us a national championship. So trust me, it's a pervasive in a culture. But the getting back to what made me successful and happy in life was going back to shooting competitions, which alcohol was there tons of. So I get that things like this is a very important discussion, but like the ability that like, hey, like not wanting to admit that you do fire or stuff like that because you either had a past or you're going through stuff right now, it's almost powerful. Like the fact that not only did you have to hide the addiction, now you have to hide what makes you happy. It's wow.
Well, let me be clear. I have a responsibility to people who attend my meetings.
Okay.
And you know this by being in the business that like it you know, if you're in these meetings and you're a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks sober, I mean, 99% chance you're going to relapse, right? And when people relapse, bad things happen. And so that's the only reason why I do it. With people that I know are in long-term sobriety, I openly talk about it. I don't care, you know, because we've all developed our own ways of coping with it. But yeah, just to be clear about that.
I guess I should clarify this. When I was saying that, I wasn't trying to use you as a primary example. I was just like, I know your story is not the only one out there that's like that. And so that's it was just kind of it triggered something in me that was like it's a very powerful moment that he talked about there.
And here's another positive thing about not drinking anymore when you're into guns. I mean, I was looking at my finances from a couple years ago. I estimate I spend anywhere between $300 a month on a light month to $1,000 or more in a month on alcohol, and that's like 2 or 3 boxes of 9mm these days. You know,
that's a gun every couple months. Absolutely. I took that money that I saved and bought an AR. I mean, with the money I saved, I bought an AR. So absolutely, there's a benefit.
I mean, they actually, I mean, and there is truth to this. They say a heavy drinker will spend anywhere from between like $250,000 to about $400,000 or $500,000 in their life on alcohol. So like, if you quit, say halfway through the lifespan of a heavy drinker, you know, you're potentially saving anywhere from $125,000 to $250,000. That's like winning the lottery just by like putting the damn bottle down.
You could buy a class 3 machine gun and have fun.
You can buy 6 of them.
It's also a lot of calories.
It is
a lot of calories, and as being a former personal trainer, it's wild how many people like they spend a bunch of money with a trainer, they get the gym membership, they show up, they do the training, and then they go home and get shit-faced, and they're just completely canceled any possibility of seeing results. and it's liquid calories. It's just empty liquid calories. And then it's like, why am I not losing weight? And it's like, well, how much let's talk about your drinking. And sometimes it's soda, Coke, Pepsi, whatever. Like, just empty sugar calories just completely annihilate all that work and effort you're putting in. And it's like, well, why am I not losing weight?
Yep.
Oh, totally. And then especially when you're a really bad alcoholic, I mean, for a while, for me, I was lucky to get in one real meal a day,
Yeah.
So it's like, and usually, so often that meal was like, all right, I wake up, 20 minutes before I got to be at work. I'm rushing out the door. Like I'm
protein
just gonna
shake.
Yeah, protein shake. If that, I mean, half the time it was like running through a drive-through,
I was 135 pounds when I got sober.
Oh, wow.
And I'm 5'11".
Yeah.
It's not enough weight
for you guys, actually.
Cocaine.
But that's what it is. You're consuming so many of your calories through alcohol, and that
it could just wreck my stomach. In my kind of drinking, I would have all day long hangovers that just like food was just like, oh God, get it away. So yeah, but there was also
the other positive, Paul, you talked about the other positive things. So because of California and COVID and everything, I actually had to buy my AR unassembled and then buy a lower separate, which I didn't I was a new gun owner. I didn't really want to do it, but I had to. Putting that together and like doing all the pins and the detents and everything. When I was drinking, there's absolutely no way I could have had the dexterity to do that, because your hands shake all the time.
How many more detents you would have lost when they shot across the room?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So that was, I do woodwork and I do all kinds of things. I've really gotten into the, the aspect of shooting, of gun ownership, where you've got all these neat little tools, and you learn how everything ticks and how it works. I had a problem with my Glock 19. I took the entire thing apart. Parts that you can't even find a video, although there probably is a video somewhere on a Glock 19. But it's great to be able to, it's great to be able to do that and to not have those issues like I did before I stopped drinking.
So yeah, totally. So we're kind of getting towards 10 till the end of this year. I will, if people want to join us in the Discord after the fact, let's get to questions first. And one thing I'll say before we do that, I generally don't like to speak on other people's behalves, but I know in the sobriety community I can say this: if anybody out there feels like they need help and they don't know what to do, you can reach out to any one of us in here completely confidentially. We will not tell another soul, and we will help you however we can. So let me just put that.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Hit me up.
So yeah, let's do some questions.
The first question was from earlier, and it was actually put in chat. What was the name of the organization that you were talking about, Mawenzi? There were some requests from clients for non-religious AA alternatives.
Yeah. So let me talk about that. I'll give a little. I did reply, and then I forgot. I'm not supposed to reply. Sorry, but I thought one word was okay. So I'm in a group called LifeRing, and you go to lifering.org, LIFERING. We are a secular recovery organization. We have books. It's based on science, based on cognitive behavioral therapy. There is Alcoholics Anonymous, AA, like I talked about, Narcotics Anonymous, NA, which are the most prominent. They are not science-based. I won't really go any farther than that, but they help a lot of people. They help Will. A lot of people get benefit from it. Here's the thing. There are secular alternatives, and they are equally as effective, all of them. Will is absolutely right. You cannot beat the reach and the frequency of AA. It is everywhere. But now with Zoom, and some people don't like it. You are open. I get people from Hawaii. I get people from. I've even had somebody from the UK on my Thursday. It's Thursday in the evening Pacific time. So we do reach farther. Let me talk about the other organizations. Then there's an organization called SMART. And SMART was a bunch of people who are disillusioned with AA. And basically what they did was they sort of filtered out all of the God and the higher power stuff, but they kept everything else. So it's structured very much like AA, but it is secular. There's another group called Dharma Recovery, which used to be called Refuge Recovery. They're into Buddhist meditation. It's pretty big on the West Coast. They actually have a lot of meetings. And then there's something called Women for Sobriety. And these are all free. These are all peer-to-peer. They're all nonprofits. They're all, they're all known organizations. They don't make any money off of anything. They are different than a recovery facility, which tend to be for profit. A lot of them are, maybe not all of them, but some of them are. And there's a lot of there actually is a lot of issues with those, but that's probably for another session.
Do all of you have any favorite memoirs about addiction and recovery?
Okay, so maybe not memoirs, so to speak. If we're talking like literature, there was two books that got me sober when I made the decision. There was one by Alan Carr, and it's called the Easy Way to Control Alcohol. It's gone through a couple different titles through different editions, but just look up Alan Carr. That book was invaluable to me. And then there's another one by Annie Grace called This Naked Mind. And both of those just really broke it down and threw the truth of it right in my face. And it's hard to unsee truth, and in a certain way, This Naked Mind is a little more narrative, where Alan's book tends to really just focus on the the science of it more. This Naked Mind, it's a really interesting story, and it kind of takes her, she explains all this through her own life and through people that she knows, and people that she knew, and it's stories of success and stories of failures, and why certain people were successful and why certain people failed, and it's just absolutely invaluable.
And what was the original question? Was it about about stories?
No, it was sorry, I'm stumbling over my own tongue now. Paul was interpreting it as literature, but the original question was, do you guys have any favorite memoirs about addiction and recovery?
So Life Ring actually published a book I think the year before, called Humanly Possible. I'll post that in the chat right now. So this is all people who've gone to Life Ring, and other groups as well, and they told their story. Some are a couple paragraphs, some are a couple pages, but it's about 60, and I think it's about 60 stories, maybe a little bit less. And we're working on actually a second version of it, second edition with even more stories. So it's
Excellent.
not it's not one person giving their memoir. It's lots of people giving small memoirs. So I guess that helps.
Okay. Eddie or Will?
Oh, you mean like anecdote stories?
Well, no. We're talking about like books, memoirs, anything that you would recommend reading wise for anyone that's looking for it.
And the main thing, I read 2 books when I was like doing my step work. Eckhart Tolle, A New Earth, and The Power of Now, which was shunned. Both were like shunned in the AA kind of world. They don't like anything that's like new agey or whatever very much, but those were both very useful for me. I was also going through a divorce, And so I just was trying to figure out a lot of things. And I found his, I'm not a huge reader, but I like those, I felt like really were very helpful.
Excellent.
Paul hit mine. The Naked Mind was a good one. Most of my work, I'll be honest, is in trauma, and trauma and addictions go hand in hand. So that's where I specialize in a lot. And for me, the one thing that if you find yourself in those guards, the thing that I like to recommend out to a lot of people is Waking the Tiger by let me pull it up. Peter Levine. It's about basically recognizing the traumatic events in your life and how to overcome them. So Waking the Tiger with that, in a sense.
Okay, and the last question, what are your thoughts on the Portuguese model with regards to decriminalizing everything, which has been going on since, I believe, 2001, after a quick Google? Open question for everybody.
Yeah, I'll speak to that. It's a heck of a lot better than what we're doing here. You know, it part of the reason why it works is because they have universal health care there already, so that when people have drugs and they're caught with, by cops or whatever, it's not like, all right, you're going to jail. It's like, all right, we're going to get you the help that you need. And the way it's not going to cost you anything because it's part of your universal health care already. My opinion of it from what I know from the research that I've done on it is that it is light years better than here where we take this public health issue and treat it as a criminal justice issue, which one thing I'll talk about, which kind of relates to race a little bit in the United States is I always found it interesting how, in the 1980s, 1990s, all of that, drugs there was all a criminal justice issue. That's all it was until little Johnny, started shooting smack in the basement of his parents' house in suburban Massachusetts, and mom was popping pills at the same time. Then all of a sudden, like, everybody loved to talk about it. Like, all right, now we all of a sudden woke up to the fact that this was a public health issue, and we were able to talk about it that way.
Also the fact that now we have 25% of the world's prisoners, right?
Yeah.
Clearly that doesn't work.
So I spoke about this earlier. I can't really speak of legalizing everything. Part of that, like Paul says, is the fact that if you are caught, they have the funds ready to be able to help. One thing I did speak about was what Washington State did, and I'm a very big fan of what they did. They legalized the most common drug that's out there and basically decriminalized it. The marijuana, it's legal there, and what they're doing is they're funding their drug rehab programs. If you're caught with any amount of personal use drug, we're not talking about you're running kilos of coke or anything like that. If it's a personal amount, they give you two options. I think it's like $100, $200 fine, or you go to the drug rehab program that's self-funded by the marijuana sales. So most people are going to choose not to go to jail, even if they're just, all right, only play this 30 days for hots in the cot. Who cares? Maybe something comes out about that. Do they get a lot of private relapses? Sure, but that's in general. Go to any hospital psych unit where they take substance use as well. You're going to have the same people coming through there once or twice a month.
Yeah. Anything? Oh, one more resource that I'd like to add. And it's funny enough, there's a subreddit r/stop drinking.
Yeah.
And that was super invaluable to me. In fact, it's kind of how I stopped in a way. I was, using Reddit a bunch, and it just popped into my feed while I was still drinking heavily. And so I followed it. I was probably really drunk at the time, and then so just people's stories and their struggles and their successes and all that stuff started popping into my feed. And I'm like, wow, like, this isn't just me. Like, and there's tons of people going to have that daily reminder and that kind of daily support group and that daily, seeing people be successful, quitting drinking and quitting drugs. It's like, wow, like, I can do this. Like, this is totally doable. Nobody has a gun to my head anymore. I can do this, So yeah, that was a very invaluable resource to me. So if you think you have a problem, maybe check that out and just read it,
If we're throwing out resources, one that I like to throw out in like I said, we talked about the different religions, stuff like that, but AA and all the others, they all have stuff online, but I'm familiar for AA because that's the one that I basically help with. if you need a meeting, I know anywhere in the world, any time of the day, there's a meeting on Zoom somewhere on AA. COVID has been wonderful. There's a group on Facebook. It's called Alcoholics Anonymous AA Support Group. It's got about 30,000 members in it. Join it, and it's almost like going to a meeting. You go in there, they don't allow war stories. They don't allow like anything like that. You go in, you tell them what they have, and you can either, like, I've seen people go up there and comment like, "Hey, I just relapsed. I'm having an issue." People comment up there, "Where do you live?" Next thing you know, you have like 4 or 5 phone calls coming to you. They're going to get you someone to help you right then. It's good. They're going to network across and everything to get you help. And it doesn't matter if you go in there, man, screw God. I don't want to believe in no God. All right, cool. You want help? We can get you. So like, there's groups out there. There's stuff out there. I used to have a spreadsheet. It's on my work email. I apologize, but it had a bunch of meetings up and down the East Coast that you can join any time of the day. If you Google AA meeting online or any of the other meetings online, you're going to find a meeting. It may be in England, may be in like Scotland, might be in Ireland, who cares? But it's going to be a meeting going on that time of day.
Eddie, do you are those links that you can publicly share if you had them right now?
Yeah, I can do the Facebook one.
Well, no, I'm just saying if you want to get it to us either through Paul or through one of the other people online at the moment, we can add them to the blog post as well, because we're going to have a list of resources that we're going to have in the blog post for this.
Yeah, I can reach back out and get that stuff to Paul afterwards.
Excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Nope, that was the last one. There have been a bunch of comments. Everyone's been thanking and supporting and
gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming and being part of this tonight. And Mr. Davenport, your shirt is I think is the money quote here, the intersection of guns and mental health, right? So the more resources we get out to folks, we're going to get them out. So we'll get these the secular links, we'll get the AA links, we'll get everything out, right? I think the real key thing here is if you need help, there's places to get help.
Yep.
And if you need support and some cheering, then these 4 guys are going to cheer you right the hell on.
Yeah,
right? They're going to be the start of your cheerleading squad. So don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid when you need help. And get.
Can I just throw in one more little quick?
Only because you're you.
If you think you might have a drinking problem, you do.
100%.
Don't ask themselves that shit.
Yeah, 100%.
Come to a meeting.
All right. Well, yeah. Anything else? Anyone else got any last minute wisdom? Because we're gonna shut this down and talk about next week and what's coming up.
Nope. Will covered it. You can go.
Again, I want to thank you all. This was awesome and illuminating, and hopefully encourage folks to go out and seek help if they think they need it. No, I don't know how do you say that. It was like, if you think you need it, you need it.
Yes.
Sure.
All right. Well, that's great. I'm going to go ahead and stop the stream here in a second. I know we got a little house cleaning to do. Danny, what